Cambridge Insider podcast time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cambridge Insider podcast. This episode is proudly brought to you by Bishop Blanchet, a Catholic college prep high school located in the heart of Seattle. With over 25 AP and honors courses and more than 100 elective courses, Bishop Blanchet offers a rigorous college prep curriculum plus a robust student life program with more than 50 student clubs, 35 athletic teams, and an award-winning performing arts program. Visit the website or check in with your Cambridge representative for Bishop Blanchet, the proud sponsor of today's podcast episode. Then it is my absolute pleasure to welcome, and we've been prepping our listeners for this for quite some time, our brand new co-host, a good friend of mine, somebody I've been working alongside for quite some time, Meg Hawthorne. Welcome to the Cambridge Insider podcast as a co-host.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm very excited to be here. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. I think before we start, we owe it to our listeners. They would not have heard you before, I don't believe. So maybe just give a little introduction of, who you are, so that the listeners can get the idea of that voice in their heads.
Okay, so I am based in Florida. I've worked in international education with Cambridge Network since 2013, promoting schools and working directly with students at some points, and had the benefit of being able to go overseas for recruitment trips and really see how it all works and meet some of the parents of our students, which is always a delight. So I'm very excited to be here with you.
Awesome. So happy to have somebody who's been in the industry for so long, who has this experience and is able to share that experience with all of our listeners, our school officials, our students, our families. It's great to have you aboard, Meg. Welcome. So before we get started, the listeners need to know Meg is based in Florida. I do get jealous when the weather turns in North Jersey and it becomes, in my own words, disgusting. I'm talking after Christmas time. I am going to make a lot of comments about how great the weather is in Florida. So I'm just preparing the listeners for that. It's coming, prepare yourself. So today specifically, we'll be talking a little bit about changing gear a little bit and talking specifically about college admissions. As always at the Cambridge Insider podcast, we're bringing you up-to-date news, and Executive Producer Dean will post this article that we'll be discussing in the show notes as always. But he shared an awesome article from a former Stanford admissions counselor talking a little bit about what students need to be looking at if they are looking to get into colleges. So much has changed in the past 18 months. I think COVID has been a big reason for a lot of that change. And this is a really, really good article that sort of discusses where we are with college admissions. Meg, you sort of, I know you've worked in and around college admissions, and you've been, at least specifically with our international students, been part of that process. What has been your just top of the mind, your experience of this and how it may have changed? And then we'll get to the article, but may have changed in the past couple of years.
Well, there's been a trend and a conversation for many years about eliminating the SAT and the ACT as a requirement. There has been a lot of discussion that it's not equitable, that it's not necessarily a predictor of student success. And some schools started adopting early. University of Chicago in 2018 went test optional. Wake Forest has been test optional for a long time. So these are very high caliber schools that said, you know what, we can do this better. So I think that it's important for students to figure out what their favorite schools are and what the criteria of those schools are. And then many of these schools are test optional. They're not required. So I think it's equally important to look and see if that's going to be something that benefits you or not. It's something that you can choose to use or don't use. Because although test optional schools say it doesn't hurt you to not submit that, if you do submit, it can help you.
Does it add
the criteria? And you really want to research that. And there are amazing tools online to be able to look and see exactly what's needed.
Okay, so not just I love what you said there, because to all of our students, potential college applicants listening out there, not just necessarily following just the guidelines as they change, but sort of thinking about how will me either doing something or not doing something as part of this application change how I'm viewed by a potential admissions counselor?
Yes. So when schools decide to go test optional or to go test blind, which means they don't require any tests at all, now as a school, they're really having to focus on different criteria and a different understanding of their applicants. So for a student, that can be very freeing, because this gives you the possibility to be able to shine in other ways, because you didn't have to reach that particular benchmark. Some people just aren't even good testers, you know? So now a student really needs to think, and this is what the article so brilliantly stated, is how do I differentiate myself? And we've always said, you need to do a lot of clubs, you need to excel in a sport, maybe leadership. I think that the point is to be able to really show that you've kind of developed a passion, and then, so importantly, to be able to write about it. So this guy is saying, be weird, be nerdy. Like the harder you can go, the more you can show of who you truly are, then that's really going to make a difference.
Absolutely. I love that little line that he says, get weird and get nerdy, because for years, since I've been involved in this industry, the sort of gold standard has been test well, be well-rounded, play a sport, get involved in volunteer activities and in the community, get involved in a club and a society, and that's sort of the golden ticket. And, you might not get into every college, but that's a good sort of blueprint, if you will. Now, specifically with the advent of no tests or test optional, and, part of what this article so well discusses is that that's changed, and that specifically students need to look at being so individual that they do stand out. What sets them apart? What makes them that unique individual? I think something, and then you and I have both traveled, and I spoke quite extensively about colleges, on many of my trips, specifically to Southeast Asia, talking and trying to convince almost, and I don't know if this is similar in your case and the experiences that you've had, but trying to convince families and students that being unique and being able to communicate your uniqueness is really something that's important. That these colleges get thousands upon thousands of students who are all great, but they all look exactly the same, because for years we've been telling them test well and be well-rounded. And you can just imagine, there's this great video that we have, and maybe we can share it. Maybe I'll get Dean to post it, but there's this great video from a college admissions counselor where he just says that, if you're seeing thousands upon thousands of the same person walking in, how do you admit one and deny another? And I think that's where the uniqueness comes in. I don't know if your experience has been similar, talking to parents, trying to convince them that being unique is actually a real big advantage.
And also in talking to students, to encourage them not only to figure out what that process is for them and what their story is in their experience, but it's also extremely important to be able to share it well, right? Writing the essay on so many of these colleges who have gone test optional, the essay has gained even more importance, because that's how they're getting to know you. So now it's the GPA, the essay, the recommendation letters. So this is the moment to shine. You've taken away another moment where you could have, or maybe could not have, whichever works to your advantage. And now you've got to be able to really tell your story. And I would really encourage kids, and I do this with my own sons, to, before it matters, just to start writing down stuff. Keep a journal, something like that, so that you can kind of hit on things or a theme that may eventually end up being an essay, right? Because these are all your thoughts about all kinds of random topics, and that can really be helpful. Yes, it's hard. I think that when you're really focusing on academics and you're focusing on test scores, those are things that you can to somewhat control. And then you're kind of laying yourself out there with an essay, right? Like, and you have to be different. If you want to get chosen and if you want to be noticed. Can you imagine being a college admissions director and sitting around with it used to be stacks of paper. Now it's like file after file after file, and really trying to establish, so you've got to capture somebody's attention.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I love the idea of keeping a journal or some kind of notebook, just where you get a couple of ideas down. And you know, life is so busy for these kids. There's 1,000 things happening, and you don't want some of that great material that you can communicate in an essay to slip through your mind and suddenly you forget about it. I think one of the big challenges for our international students specifically is not just communicating, you know, your experiences, but also exposing yourself to situations that make it easier for you to have the experiences and talk about them. Because typically our international students, strong academically, would come, and as you mentioned, it would be in their control. I study really hard, I do my AP courses, and, you know, there's a measure of control there. Now we're saying to them, you need to write a personal essay about something weird. That's so, I want to say, anti the type of stereotypical type of student that we've been getting. So, you know, and I know that we have students and parents and families that are listening to this. Expose yourself. If there's an opportunity to do a debate club, get in there and debate, talk about it. If there's an opportunity as you prepare for maybe getting into a high school and you're interviewing with schools, there's an opportunity to do an interview, do one, because communicating and verbalizing it is good practice as you lead up to ultimately what many of our students want, which is communicating this essay, that, you know, to be able to get into college one day.
And I agree 100%. And also those experiences of getting involved and trying things, they help you decide what you don't like. And that can be just as powerful and just as informative when used in the right way, as you know, focusing exactly on everything that's perfect for you or everything that you love. I thought that it was interesting that this guy said, okay, if what you've got is history, if that's really something that excites you and keeps you up at night, then don't just talk about how you want to become a historian or whatever. What specifically do you love? What draws you to that? And tie it, I think, take it to the next step and tie it to your life. You're painting a picture of yourself, which is so much harder, I think, for so many kids than studying and showing how fabulous they are academically, or right.
100%. I think the objective versus subjective evaluation is what it comes down to, and how easy it is. Well, not easy, but how more in control it is when you have that objective. I can just go in and study for a test, do really well at it, versus now suddenly somebody's judging me on something that I've written on paper where I don't really know what the right answers are. I will say at this point, and I'm going to get to you now, Meg, but I will say at this point, if you're a school official and you're listening to us, understand how valuable this type of comprehensive information is for potential applicants. So if you have high school applicants international students wanting to come to your school, make sure that this is something that you're communicating to them, that this whole arena has changed and you have the resources within your school to guide them through this. If we have families and students listening to us, which I know we do, make use of your Cambridge Network resources as well, your student development managers, our mentorship program that we have, our different programs that we have that can guide students. Feel free to reach out to your Cambridge rep and make sure that you are inquiring about those, because in this world where things are constantly changing, you want to make sure that you are focusing on the right things, specifically when it comes to college apps, which, you know, for many of you is so important. Meg, sorry, I interrupted you there. You had some other thoughts.
Oh, I think that's great. We work with so many schools who offer so many pathways to the college that's right for these students, right? And so many people to be able to help them get involved and to really excel and find their passion, not just what they need to do to succeed, but what they want to do and where they want to be spending their time. And that's invaluable. And
absolutely. 100%. And I think, I don't want to harp on the same point, but following your passion is sometimes a difficult thing. You're told what you should be doing by parents, families, the media, and there's something deep down that you really want to be doing. And as Meg says, I think it's easier to communicate and to passionately talk about something that you really want to be doing rather than something that you think you should be doing. Interesting thoughts all around. Great article. We will post it in the show notes. And as always, at the Cambridge Insider Podcast, keeping the different variety of listeners that we have updated with what's happening in and around the field of international education. Meg, your first episode, just like that, and it's gone. How quick reflection? How was the first episode for you?
Thank you. You made that very comfortable. I appreciate you, Stephen.
Any final thoughts from your side? Anything that you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, thank you for having me. I look forward to joining you.
Awesome. Meg Hawthorne, our new co-host at the Cambridge Insider podcast. As mentioned before, executive producer Dean's going to put some great stuff on the show notes, so feel free to reference those, specifically the article we spoke about today. And as always, get in touch with us. Drop us a line. I'll make sure that Dean also puts the updated info in terms of how to contact us. Send us messages. Send us some questions that you'd like to discuss. And then, as always, we'll catch you around the next episode of the Cambridge Insider podcast. Bye-bye, everybody.